Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Shawn Busse, Jay Goltz, and Jennifer Kerhin talk about what it takes to plan and execute an employee retreat, especially in our post-COVID, more remote environment. Do you go offsite? Do you take everybody? Do you delegate the planning? Do you try to measure the ROI? Jennifer tells us about the interesting responses she got when she encouraged her employees at her retreat to ask her anything. Shawn explains why he let his leadership team do all the planning and didn't set a budget. Jay, meanwhile, offers a slightly different perspective. My company retreat, he tells us, is I cut back on my advertising. That's my retreat. Plus, how well does the E-Myth hold up as a playbook for business owners? Is it still relevant? Or was it written for a type of business that is far less prevalent today? And Jay tells us what he thinks of Wayfair opening a massive brick-and-mortar furniture store right down the expressway from his furniture store. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. In fact, that's the whole idea behind the 21 Hats community, engaging with other owners to get the kinds of insights only another entrepreneur can offer. If you're interested in tapping the wisdom of this very impressive crowd, step one is to sign up for the Morning Report, which highlights the most important news of the day for business owners so you don't have to go looking for it. Just Google 21 Hats Morning Report to subscribe. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Shawn Busse, CEO of Kinesis, which is based in Portland, Oregon, and works with small businesses on marketing, culture, and strategy. Jay Goltz is CEO of the Goltz Group, whose companies in Chicago include a picture frame business, artist frame service, and a home furnishing store, Jason Home. And Jennifer Kerhin, who is CEO of SB Expos and Events, an events management business based near Baltimore. The episode is titled Beyond Trust Falls, an event planner plans an offsite. Before we get started, I want to play part of an interview I did with Steve Baker, who is vice president with our sponsor, The Great Game of Business. I talked to Steve about why he thinks the term open book management is often misunderstood. Listeners to this podcast are well aware of The Great Game of Business, and if they know anything about it, they know that you guys encourage companies to practice what is known as open book management. Can you just give us a real quick primer on how you guys view that, what open book management is?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm glad you brought it up because it's a huge misnomer for us. Open book management, that's like what we're known for. We're the open book people. And Jack Stack, Inc. magazine in 2009 called him the father of open book management. I'm just going to put it out there. If Jack were on the podcast with us now, he would say, I don't really like that term that much. Because see, what happens, Lauren, is people hear it and they assume that if they open their financials, someone's going to magically care, you know what I mean? Like they're going to somehow be interested or even understand it. And so let's go back in history a little bit. I mentioned before that Jack has used this analogy of a game for 40 years. In reality, he didn't even name it Great Game of Business in the beginning. It was just this analogy of a game and those principles that I laid out. Know and teach the rules, follow the action and keep score, and provide a stake in the outcome, all encircling a team goal. Well, as they got more and more coverage at SRC through the 80s and into the 90s, when the book finally came out, I believe it was Lucian Rhodes at Inc. magazine that helped to coin that term. John Case, another Inc. writer at the time who wrote Open Book Management, The Coming Revolution. A lot of that was about SRC. He actually coined the term open book management. And then Bo Burlingham from Inc. Co-wrote the original book with Jack, and is still a very dear friend and close partner of the game. What I'm trying to say is that I love all that collaboration, but through the years, when you simplify something down and it gets hung with a marketing moniker, sometimes it doesn't describe it the best way possible. I was just on the plane back from Anchorage last night, and somebody next to me, what do you do? And I was so tempted to say, well, I'm the open book management guy. But instead, I decided to kind of peel it back just a little bit and say, well, what's keeping you up at night? And this particular person went on to tell me about, everybody wants to work from home. They want unlimited vacation, bemoaning kind of the next gen workers. And I said, what would happen if you could align everyone to a common goal and get them talking about things in a different way and actually believe that they could move the number you worry about most? And for him, it was talent and cash. I'm just going to be honest. And he was just absolutely blown away that someone could do it. I'm afraid if I would have started with open book management, that he would have shut down, put on his Bose noise-canceling earphones and left me alone. But the key is I stopped for a second and listened and said, what is your biggest problem? Rather than leading with, we want you to open your financials and go open kimono with all of your people. That isn't the point. It's let's teach them some of the things you know, and over time, we'll give them more and more, not only exposure and education. It's not just about transparency, because that's worthless without education, right? But also more responsibility and accountability. Hey, if this is your number, tell me how you can actually move it. And then we'll give you a piece of the action. We'll give you some skin in the game.
So you're saying you do open the books. That's true. It's just that there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I think that it's the simplification of it to open book management that really rallies people who know us, but repels people who don't.
You can read a text version of my entire interview with Steve at 21hats.com. And now, on to today's show. Welcome, Shawn, Jay, and Jennifer. It's great to have you here. As it happens, coincidentally, I think, we haven't heard from either Shawn or Jennifer in a little while, in part because you both had employee retreats recently, which is something I've kind of been curious about anyway. Obviously, there was a period after the pandemic where very few, if any, companies were doing retreats. And I'm sort of wondering to what extent they're back and whether they've changed, whether the goals and, the way they're used has changed. Maybe Jennifer, could you start and tell us what you guys did?
Sure, absolutely. It was extraordinary. We're a fully remote company. And because of that, we're on a lot of Zoom calls. And those are fantastic and efficient, but it's hard to develop camaraderie. It's hard to do some training. It's hard to have just those, when you're sitting in a room, that osmosis and that feeling of giving and take and brainstorming. We often go on show sites for our clients for conventions. And so some of that camaraderie, depending on the team you're working at, is developed there. But we decided last year that we were going to put into our budget a full staff retreat. And it was tremendous. We did 4 days. The first day was what we call, in our line of work, right, we're convention planners, the general session. Everybody was in one room. We had some invited speakers. We had a facilitator and a theme on that general session day. Then the next day was what we called department day. So each of the departments got together and had a series of, goals for that meeting. The third day was intra-department day, so that the different departments could meet with each other for like 2 hours and talk about handoffs, any challenges that they're facing, or just learn about the other departments. And then they all went home that night. The next day was our senior management team. We had a full day of management training as well as planning for the future. Sprinkled throughout were team building exercises, lots of attendee engagement, a lot of prizes throughout. I think a couple of the big things we did that was fun for engagement. The first one was we went to a conference center, which is very different than a hotel. And a conference center, why that's unique and perfect for a staff retreat is it combines the hotel rooms, the meeting rooms, and food and beverage, because there's a cafeteria in the room, all in one price in one location. So all of my employees were captive. They didn't go out to a different restaurant, but it was so easy from a meeting planning and so easy for all of them there. That's what they do all day. Nobody had to think. You got up, you had breakfast, you went to the event, you could have lunch in the cafeteria that fit your day. It was really perfect. But we did two things. One was a culinary challenge. We divided into teams of 4, and they had fruits and vegetables. They had to create some sort of vehicle that would go down the slide, and the fastest team won prizes. So that was a big hit, Justin. We put people that never work with each other. So they had to do some team building. We gave out prizes for that. It was just a lot of fun. The second thing we did was red, yellow, and green Post-its. And so they were given a notebook and a stack of red, yellow, and green Post-its. And throughout the couple days, they had to write down if they had an aha moment, of something they should stop doing that was written on the red Post-it. Something that they had to think and consider that went on the yellow Post-it. Something they should start doing they had not yet done on the green Post-it. And on the last day, in the last hour, everybody had to pick the top one, and we put them on those giant large poster boards. Everybody put one red. The next poster board had the yellows and the greens. We took pictures, and we're going to hold everybody accountable for next year to see how they did for next year's retreat. And then the final was the blue Post-it. They all got blue Post-its. We had swag bags, right? They got swag bags, tons of company swag. But the blue Post-it was, we did an Ask Me Anything. So that's what they could do. Throughout the 3 days, they could write down anonymously on the blue Post-it, put it in a jar at the back of the room. And then I answered all of the questions that were anonymous from staff. It was really eye-opening, their questions, and I think they got a lot out of it. So that's us in a nutshell. We did a survey beforehand to ask what their top needs were, and we incorporated in the programming. And then we've done a post-retreat survey to see how we did. And everyone said it far, far exceeded their expectations, and they were incredibly happy we did it. So that was a long answer, Lauren, but I hope that helped explain what we did.
Absolutely. That's a lot. I have some questions I'm sure Shawn and Jay do too. A couple of things. First, you told us about it this before you held it, and you told us where the conference center was, but remind me, where is it?
It was the National Conference Center in Leesburg, Virginia. They did an amazing, amazing job. It's right by Dulles Airport. And
you said this was full staff? You invited everybody?
Yeah, 31 staff members came.
Wow.
Can you give us an idea what that cost?
Wait, let me guess. $40,000.
50.
Okay.
Yep. You were right on. 50,000. That included, we had 2 consultants come in, a lot of the prizes.
Okay. I didn't include consultants. Okay.
Yeah. The consultants, the prizes, we gave away prizes. We did a poll at the end for like best engagement, we gave probably $2,000 in prizes throughout the 4 days.
And I'm curious about the blue Post-it questions that you got. Of what kind of nature were they? Are they tough questions? Were they silly questions? What did you get?
There was a combination. Some of them I expected. There were a lot about when is the 401k plan coming in effect. And so I signed off. It just takes a while to set it up on the back end. So we've set it up at the end of August to have the planning conversation. So there were a lot about that. There were simple ones about dress code. They talked about dress code. There were some really good ones.
Is that dress code when you guys are on site? Because you're a remote company.
Yes, that's right. Well, and even when we're remote, I have a requirement that when you're on Zoom calls with a client, you can't wear shirts that have logos or sayings on it. They have to be empty, right? I don't want anything from the waist up that's visible on Zoom. I have a dress code for that.
That makes sense.
Yep. And then on site, one of the questions that was really interesting, they asked what my succession plan was.
Wow.
I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, right.
Was that from your number 2?
No. But I think it had to do with they were, some of them are fearful I'm going to sell the company. And they are all, I got great feedback. They are inspired by my vision. So that was fantastic feedback. But then they're fearful. They don't want to put in a lot of effort if they think I'm going to sell it next year. So it was less succession and more, I think the question went towards, am I selling it? And I said, no, I'm not selling.
Is it possible that came from your husband?
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. Yeah. That's a great point. I'm trying to think of what were some of but those are the ones that stand out to me that I thought were insightful and interesting. And, some questions, very few about the future of the industry, but one that stood out was, what do you think's happening with hybrid events? And that one we had a good conversation about, because I feel very strongly that the word hybrid, it's still happening. It's just changing what the new normal is. And hybrid means a lot of different things to a lot of different of our clients, but it's still happening. So we talked a little bit about an industry trend.
Was this the first time you've done something as ambitious as this?
Absolutely. So we've grown a lot. In 2019, we had 6 employees, and I did a retreat, but it was 6 employees. And the quality and ability, they were fantastic employees, but it was a very different size company, right? We've quadrupled on size. And so that's sitting around a living room talking about training, right? Not big picture conversations and not planning. The management training was really fantastic. We had a consultant come in, and one of the questions was, as the company grows, what are the opportunities for people that are coordinators and managers? So also seeing what's their personal growth plan in this company. They were really good questions. They really thought about them.
It sounds like somebody put a lot of thought into this. Was it you, or did you delegate planning? How did this come to be?
I ran it this year because I had a vision of what this would be, but I'm turning it over to my meetings department and my senior leaders. I had asked for different thoughts and advice. So the person who thought of the surveys, great idea because we pulled information in it. One of my other directors came up with the Post-its. They all came up with ideas. I drove it for the vision, but I'm handing it off next year to our director of meetings. I also drove the location at the conference center because I think conference centers are really great locations for retreats. It just makes it easier. The Ask Me Anything, I think, was just as a result from Reddit. And there was a great question I thought was really interesting because we have a lot of people under 30. They said, why won't you allow us to discuss our salaries with each other? Great question, right? And I said, when did I ever tell you you're not allowed to discuss salaries?
Wow, that's amazing.
And they all looked at me and I said, I legally cannot tell you not to discuss salaries. All I can tell is if you're a manager responsible for people under you, you can't discuss their salaries. But feel free to discuss your salaries. But if you do, please know that you are possibly opening Pandora's box, that either you're going to be unhappy or they're going to be unhappy, and be prepared for that. I can't stop you. And there was a lot of conversation under that. It was very interesting because the people over 35 were like, I'm not discussing. Why would you discuss your salary? And the people under 30,
they'd already shared it.
Yeah, right. It was a very, that was a very interesting question.
That was good advice you gave them because you're right. It's a Pandora's box.
Yeah.
You can't get it back in the box after it's out. So
that's right. That's right.
All right. I have two questions.
Sure.
One is you don't normally work with all these people face to face. Was there some people out of that 31 after the 3 days that you were less than impressed with?
Yes.
Yeah, I would assume so because, speak up enough. Didn't. Okay. And the second one is, and this could just be me, of course, but I cringe whenever I hear anonymous anything because I want to have a company where people are grown-ups and go ahead and stand behind their question. And did you think about not making it anonymous? That my argument is, boy, if they don't got the self-confidence or whatever to go ahead and ask a question and put their name on it, I don't really like anonymous stuff. I just find it to be a lack of courage and lack of I just don't like the corporate culture part of that. What do you think of that?
That is a very interesting thought. It never occurred to me not to make it anonymous. I wanted people to feel comfortable asking me anything, and I answered every single question in there. And I was worried, especially the people under 30. The people that have been here for a while, people are older, I don't think would have a problem putting their name. I wanted the younger people to feel comfortable that, look, I'm the CEO. I will answer it. You may not like my answer. One of them about the dress code, I said straight up, you may not like my answer, but this is my company and I have a vision for our brand, and our brand is what you wear on show site, and that's final. So I wanted them comfortable. Honestly, Jay, it never occurred to me that not to make it anonymous.
Well, the other thing you could do next time is do the same way. And then at the end of the dress code, say, would anybody like to own that question? And just give them an opportunity to say, yeah, that was my question. Showing them yeah, go ahead. Just that it's okay to put your name on it. It's just, like I said, I just have a problem with people hiding in the shadows.
If you're 23 or 24, you're really smart, curious, and I want you to grow your career here at this company. I'm okay if they're too afraid to ask in front of everybody. I'm okay with it being anonymous.
For that age, maybe you're right. I got it. Yeah.
Jay, the succession question, it seems to me, might fall into that category. Somebody might not want to stand up in front of everyone and say, so are you going to sell the business?
So my combo play would simply be, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to put your name on it, but I certainly would appreciate it, so I could have a follow-up conversation with you. So put your name on it if you're comfortable. If not, you don't have to. But I think that's a good compromise, that at least they know that they could have put their name on it.
What did Jennifer, kind of speaking of these, hard questions, you said that they were really excited about your vision and that they also wanted to know if you're going to sell the business. And you said that you weren't going to sell the business. What did you fill that space with in terms of where the organization is headed and what your plans are?
So I told them, I said, listen, I'm 55. You have me 5 to 6, 7 years. I said, but at some point I do have to think about retirement. And that may not be full-fledged retirement. That may be I step back from the day-to-day and just provide strategic vision. That may mean I acquire another company and get a president. That may mean I decide to sell. I don't know. So, but here's where I see the future of this company. I sort of pivoted to how big I see the growth plan for it, what we plan to do, and I want you to be a part of it. So what I tried to do is, look, I'm here. We have now made a small company into a strong foundation and an amazing possibility for the future. I want them to still believe in that. And I'm here to see it to the next stage. But the next stage may or may not include me full time. But the vision will continue. We're going to stay with association conventions and what we call non-dues revenue. We're going to stay in that world. And if you want to be a part of that, we'd love you to be a part of it. We're not going to change that. But, the next phase, I have 5 years to figure out the next phase.
Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was honest too, because in 5 years, if you did sell, you could look back and go, this was one of the things that's possible and it happened. And there won't be a sense of betrayal, hopefully, at that point.
Did you try to reassure them in some way that if you did sell, your vision would still prevail?
You know what? There's probably only 2 people in the company that need that assurance. The rest of them, they have not been with me for a long time. They don't know me. So the company stands on its own. We're past the point where myself as the founder is the point for the entire company and the vision. There is a concept out there, and Shawn might be able to talk to this more about making the owner or the founder the brand of the company around them. And I have tried very hard not to make it about me, to make it about the company and the people that work here. So there's not a cult of personality for me here. Is there a little bit, right? Because I started, sure, but I'm trying to actively get away from that. So I think there's probably only a couple people that was, most of the people really are very okay with this. There was not any pushback. To be honest, the pushback was a little bit more about the dress code.
I think you're 98% there. Can I just give you some input that you said?
Absolutely.
You said something I would never say to employees. You said just now, it's not about you, blah, blah, blah. But then when they asked about the dress code, you just said, well, it's my company.
I know. Good point.
I would have skipped the my company thing and just said, it's about our brand. That's our brand, professionalism. You don't need to throw in. They all know it's your company. I've never in all these years told my employees, well, here's what we're going to do because it's my company. I just think it's a bad kickoff.
You know what, Jay? That's a very, very good insight. And what's interesting, I think that's the only time I slightly felt defensive. The entire time when they were asking me about an salary succession plan, I think that's the only time. And you're right. Now that I hear you say that, you're right. I should not have said that.
Okay. I'm glad I'm still providing some value at my old age.
Yes, you are.
All right, Shawn, it's your turn. Can you top that?
No, I think we need to move on. I mean, it's really impressive. When you ask an event planner to organize an event, it's pretty impressive. So yeah, that's awesome, Jennifer. Yeah. So ours is quite a bit different. I've been doing offsites for, I don't know, probably started doing them 15 years ago or so. And I think they've changed pretty dramatically as a result of being a hybrid company and remote work. So in the early days of offsites, it was really more about planning and setting goals and getting aligned on what we're going to do over the coming year. And then usually there was some sort of like fun activity or something like that. And in the last, 3 or 4 years, I've really pivoted from an emphasis on what's the plan for the coming year to building relationships with each other. And I found that because we're working much more remote, we have employees who are kind of flung across the country, like Jennifer, that the importance of building camaraderie and I'll just say vibe is just way, way, way higher than it used to be. And so our emphasis was much more on that. The kind of things we did were, on the first day, we did kind of a fun process where we broke into groups of 3 or 4, and then each group did a presentation on what they saw was important to the company and what mattered in the coming years. And the group that I was part of, we talked a lot about leadership and how the kind of work we're doing now is we've moved from, doing a lot of brand and brand strategy work into more like organizational development, leadership structure, even like what does the future of the company look like and how does it get shaped? As we do more and more of that work, we've come to realize that the persona of the leader really, really matters. And we could do brand work pretty well with a leader that wasn't the strongest leader, but we're learning that it's really hard to do this other type of work with leaders who aren't really in it to win it. And so we talked a lot about that. We talked a lot about how do we get the right types of leaders as our customers, so that we can do the best work we can possibly do. Because the interesting thing about being a professional service provider is you can have 2 clients that are really similar in size and revenue and even kind of a similar business model. You can have the same team working with those 2 clients, and one client experiences tremendous results and the other client is dissatisfied and gets nothing out of it. That's kind of an extreme case. And so what's the difference? If you've got the same team doing the work, if you've got a similar process, it's often boils down to the leader's investment in the effort. And so that was something we spent a lot of time on. And I think it was really, really valuable. And we started talking about like what makes a really good customer and how do we message and communicate to those types of businesses. And then the other thing we did that I think is really important and often missed in an offsite, I think Jennifer did a good job of this, is that we had activities that weren't just like trust falls or, like whitewater rafting or jumping out of airplanes, all of which we have done in the past. But they were more like creative problem solving, kind of coming together to do things as a group and that aren't necessarily related to the work. So, Jennifer's example was like this cooking event. We did some stuff with a ceramic studio where we all kind of worked on these, kind of pottery exercises. And it was super fun. So that idea of people coming together, doing something creative that gets them solving problems together in a way that's really outside the business helps expose employees to each other in a new way, in a kind of a vulnerable way. And I found that type of activity, which, on its surface are like, oh, you went to a clay studio, that's so frivolous. It's actually really deeper than that in terms of finding out who people really are. And so our emphasis was really, I would say 10x on, bonding and connection and communication, and a lot less about solving the problems for the business in a real kind of plan oriented way. And I think that was the right call because I think the team really needed that connection.
Shawn, remind me how large your staff is?
We're 11.
And how long were you guys together?
2.5 days. Yeah.
So 2 dinners, 2 full days, and then 2 dinners. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you go somewhere or did you do it out of your office or?
Combination. So day 1, we met at the office. We did the kind of creative presentation project, which looked a lot like making art and presenting stuff. And that was, maybe 3 or 4 hours of time together. And then we went to dinner at a really nice restaurant here in Portland's got great food. So, much better than Chicago.
Yeah. Dream on, baby. Dream on.
So, yeah. And then, the next day, I think we went out to lunch. We had the ceramic thing. We went out to dinner. Yeah. So just a lot of time together. And I think you need that to offset the amount of video time together, because I think video time it doesn't move a relationship forward in the same way being in person does.
Shawn, what was your call to actions afterwards?
We didn't have any. The team really wanted to emphasize connection and reinvigoration, and that was I didn't do any of the planning for this one. This was all I'm in a stage of my career where I'm letting people do work that I typically would do. And, that was the message that the leadership team came to me with, is like, we really want this to be an emphasis on connection and, shared celebration. And I let them do it. And I think it was absolutely the right decision.
Did they ask you your succession plan?
We're real transparent here. My goal is to turn Kinesis into an employee-owned company in some way or the other. And I'm not quite sure what that path is going to be, but that didn't come up. Salaries don't come up. We do open book management, so we have transparent salaries. So it's a different need. But in the past, I've had offsites that are very, very similar to what Jennifer outlined, and so I think we've just really shifted in terms of this one, what it's going to be. Now, we facilitate offsites for our clients, and we've led them, and many of them often look a lot more plan. So this was new for me, but I support what they decided to do. Yeah.
Did you give your planning team a budget?
Nope.
Did they exceed it?
Nope. I don't even know what they spent.
Really?
Nope. Didn't ask those questions. I just trusted them to use their best judgment.
Interesting.
Yeah. I run things differently than a lot of businesses. I think there isn't infinite money you can spend on these types of things, but I think you can spend a lot of money and it's still well worth it. If you look at the data, employee engagement has not moved at all. Like it's terrible. Employee engagement across the board is terrible. And I've just been thinking a lot about that lately. Like, why?
You're not talking about in your business. You're talking about in general.
No, I'm talking about in general.
Where does that data come from? Where did you get that?
Gallup's been tracking it forever. It's like a third of employees are just like disengaged,
Wait, do you not think there's a difference between a large publicly held corporation and small business as far as the engagement?
Oh, for sure. I know the data's skewed on that one in terms of where they're getting the information from. But I also think that a lot of small businesses take their cues, whether deliberately or inadvertently, from large corporations. If you think about business books and where the advice that comes out of them comes from, it's usually from research in academia that's done on large corporations. And so what happens is the way things are run and the way things are done often are these kind of trickle down versions of large corporations, hierarchical organizations, stratification, salary, secrecy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I am convinced the longer I get into my career and the more I watch things and the more we do work, that the untapped potential in organizations is in the people. And how do you invest in people in ways that get them to be really excited and working, really putting their all into it? And I've seen that with our company.
I agree with your conclusion. No, I agree that getting people more engaged is where the payoff is. I'm not at all convinced that the reason why these companies are doing it is because they read some book from an academic or they followed some bit. I think it's more of a natural. They just haven't figured it out. I don't know that they're gleaning this from books and they're bringing in big business into it.
No, I'll give you. Let me give you an example, Jay. Most entrepreneurs have read the book, The E-Myth. It's a great example, right?
Okay, true.
E-Myth has some wonderful guidance in it. It talks about like the different types of entrepreneurs and what motivates people to become an entrepreneur. And that piece I actually tend to agree with. But there's also a lot of guidance in the book about running your company and making it all about systems. And one of the kind of core precepts in it is, you want your business to be like McDonald's, where an employee can not show up for work and you can replace them with another employee right away. That's a general like corporate mentality, is we don't want any one individual to be critical to the business because that's a threat. And so that book, if you talk to almost any entrepreneur, they've read it. And most entrepreneurs will be like, oh, I love the E-Myth. I love the E-Myth.
I think that's an exaggeration. First of all, how old's that book? 30 years old at this point?
It was written in 95, I think.
Okay, so it's 30 years ago. I certainly don't think that most entrepreneurs have read it. Some.
No.
But you know what's interesting? I read E-Myth and I absolutely bought into that years ago. And I have come to the conclusion that what we do as a company, and this staff retreat was a turning point, is the people that are doing the best in this company are the people that are curious and who don't want to work in a systemic driven company. And I have revised the type of hiring I need to do. You need to understand events or want to be in events, of course, but I want people that are curious, and it is antithetical to that book. And I don't think I even realized it, Shawn, until you said it. Because when I was floundering, I didn't know what to do. Someone gave me E-Myth. I read it. I was like, oh, great. It's a playbook. It's a playbook, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, it has some good points that you need, some systems. But if you try, in at least my type of company, and make it so system driven, those people, I need more curious people to make decisions on the fly and to be more thoughtful and creative than I need systems driven people. And that's so interesting you brought that up. It's a little aha moment in my head right now.
Listen, I can't argue with any of that. And believe me, when I read it, there was a couple of concepts in it, but that was about it. But I could name you 10 books I read that was just so. Here, how about this one? Can you explain the 1 Minute Manager, how that turned into this hot book? Did you read it? The 1 Minute Manager?
That's a little too old for me, I think.
After reading E-Myth, I didn't have any systems. And I swung the pendulum too far.
Same here.
And what I need to do is level it out and come back to the middle. You need to have some systems. You cannot run a company that's a consulting agency of independent consultants. But then you can't, I'm not a manufacturing company that's a systemic driven company. And even people in manufacturing need to be problem solvers and curiosity, right? The designers and everything. So E-Myth goes a little bit too far. At least I took that premise too far, and I need to recalibrate.
Most people do. It's not just E-Myth. You know, if you look at a lot of like Collins books, which I used to love, Good to Great, et cetera, if you dig deeper, and once you've had some lived experiences and run a business long enough, you start to see cracks in the foundation of these books and of larger business principles. And I'm not just saying like this from a theoretical case. Like I've seen this in the journey of running Kinesis and then helping clients. And so as an example, you know, for a long time as a consultancy, I was given the message of, you know, the most important thing is utilization rates, meaning the time your employees work on client work, and getting that number as high as possible, and to reward the people doing the most amount of work on customer work. And I ran that. And then sure enough, wow, look at this. I'm profitable now like I never was before. And the profits keep going up. But then I started to see all these weird side effects. And I'm like, wait, the books don't talk about this stuff. You know, like people being really anxious, people, you know, whose rates weren't as high as other people, feeling insufficient and insecure, people quitting because of the anxiety created from these things. And in hindsight, what I've come to realize is that the overarching concepts in business, like setting aside E-Myth, but most business is to build your business like a machine or a factory. And that makes sense because our heritage is in industrial manufacturing. I mean, we've been doing it really well for many, many years, but we're in a time of not only service-based businesses, but volatility and massive change and changing customer desires. So what you actually need are not people who can do the same thing over and over again. You need people who are dynamic and can adapt. And even Jay, your business, which tends to do a lot of the same things over and over again, I'm guessing a big part of your success is that you helped your people understand the value of being nimble to your customer and what goes on.
I 100% agree with every single thing you're saying. And I would add that the problem is also to compete with big corporations that have the systems. You do have to be nimble and innovative and find opportunities. That is the core competencies of a successful entrepreneur, because the big businesses got all those systems in place. You're not going to outsystem them, but you can outthink them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I would like to follow up with Jay on that point, on the point of competing with big corporations. Jay, we've talked from time to time over the past couple of years about how your home store kind of competes with some very big companies out there, including Wayfair, which has traditionally, I don't know if traditional is the right word for Wayfair, but they've been selling online. Interestingly, they just opened a huge new store
that I drive by twice a day, every day down the Eden's Expressway. Every day I get to look at it. Yes.
I'm curious what you think of that. Has it had an impact on you?
Their revenue last year, this is all public information, so this is accurate. Their revenue in 2023 was $12 billion. The entire home furniture industry is $63 billion, which means they have an 18.8% share of the business, which you could certainly call disruptive. The other interesting part is they lost $738 million, which is 6% of sales. Now, as someone who owns a furniture business, who does a good amount of online shipping, I got to tell you, if I wouldn't be telling you to buy the stock, because they got three issues. You got freight expenses, free freight. You got to give free freight. You got the discounting to get them to your site in the first place and to sell it. And then you got returns. They've got the triple threat of freight keeps going up, and shipping furniture is a major. This isn't sending a box of shoes. You're talking about a coffee table, a sofa. I mean, I'm in that world. The freight is as much as the product sometimes. So like I gave up on the free freight on everything thing. We cut that out. So between the free freight and the tremendous returns and the discounting, I'm not sure they're going to pull this off. I think that's a big gamble.
Well, and then there's other challenges too, which is like, buying cheap crap from China is getting pretty out of vogue pretty fast in lots of ways, right? Cost of transit, carbon footprint, just on and on and on. I mean, and not to mention nationalism.
Right. So let me put my other hat on, not the internet hat. Now I'll put my retailer hat on. I went into the store and I'm confused, like, wait, I thought I was in a furniture store. Am I in IKEA? They're selling plastic bins and hangers and laundry baskets. What? Where am I?
Whoa,
and then I read that that was their strategy to go after IKEA. Well, let's look at IKEA for a moment. It was started in 1943. They do $47 billion a year, and they showed a 3% profit. I don't think on my list of things to do would be, I think I want to compete with IKEA. You talk about a company that's got their act together. So this could be the next big blow up out there in the business world of, at some point, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think at some point a company's going to have to show a profit. So the question is, how long can this go on? And like I said, it's only getting harder with freight costs. It's going up and up and up and up. And people are conditioned now to, I don't know if I like the color of that tape. I'm going to send it back. And they pay for the freight back. So jury's out. So every day, though, I get a wake-up call coming to work and going home from work. I get to look at their gigantic Wayfair sign on the gigantic building. The building is about 200 feet from the expressway, so you get to look at it every day. So does it hurt my business? I sell cool, interesting furnishings and accessories, but I'm sure there's somebody buying something from Wayfair, including anonymously one of my daughter-in-laws. So actually two of my daughters. I'm not going to tell you which ones, but 2 out of my 3 daughter-in-laws.
I mean...
Yeah. Hey, where did you get that rug? Okay, great. Did I mention that I own a furniture store and a carpet rug?
I don't really care how much money Wayfair loses. I have no sympathy or empathy for them, but it has impact on lots of others.
Absolutely.
Are there other independent furniture stores in Chicago? Are there many aside from yours, or are they mostly competing with big chains, Restoration Hardware?
No. There's a chain here. It's been here since the 40s. They got 10 stores. There's half a dozen privately owned, or probably more than that. I'm not thinking about one store, but there's 3 stores, 5 stores. There's plenty of privately owned. The furniture industry is not like a lot of industries where there's just a couple of big companies in it. So no, there's plenty of people. And I know for a fact that one of the bigger ones, because I just went out with my rep from a place that I advertise in, and she told me they're cutting back on all their advertising because business is not good. I mean, if this is my guess now, if 40% of the furniture sold in America was sold because you just moved, and interest rates being so high, if moving is down by 50%, which I think it is, there's 20% of your market. Boom. That's what I hear when you talk to people in the industry. Everybody says everyone's off 20, 30%. It's pretty brutal right now. This high interest rates has a lot of effect on other things than just selling houses. So it's not a party time right now. So when you talk about company retreat, my company retreat is I've cut back on my advertising. That's my retreat, or my retreating.
Well, now that you bring it up, Jay, have you ever done an employee retreat?
No. I'm in retail. I'm in manufacturing.
Have you done like a summer picnic or something?
Oh, yes. I used to have those regularly, but it got more difficult when I opened Jason 24 years ago. We're open Sundays now. I'm open 7 days a week, and it's getting harder to schedule something that, so I haven't had one in a long time. Do I think it would be good to have something? Yes, absolutely. So I probably need to get back to that. But, yeah, it's not easy.
I've seen it done. We've helped with some of this too, in some kind of sideways ways. But like, there's stuff you can do at larger organizations where you do a lot of stuff kind of offline first. I mean, surveys, conversations, et cetera, small group stuff, and then you can find ways to do it. It's hard, but I think you could do it, and it's probably worth it.
I do have, I take it back. I do have lunches that we pay for lunch, but I separate, I've got the framing factory. I do it over there. And that's the other weird thing. I've got different companies. Somebody was telling me they're at a party talking to another person they just met at the party. Oh, where do you work? Oh, I work at Jason. And this is an artist frame service employee. They work in my other company right next door. They never even met each other. I mean,
would you ever close for the day? I mean, we had to shut down for 4 days.
That would be really, is a retailer that just is kind of heresy to me. I'd have a real hard time with putting a note. Sorry, we're having our company event today. And on top of which, like I said, the problem is I've got about 35 people working for Jason. I've got about 50 people working in the framing business. I've got, 12 in the wholesale business. So some of them are even in the same building, but they're not the same company. And then just it's so many people at this point. I got 130 employees.
What if you did it by area, by the warehouse had their retreat, the retail store?
Yes, I do need to do that. No argument there. I need to do that. Consider it done.
I would say it was well worth the money, Jay. It's a big expense.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I had a vision for it, but it was really nice. The feedback I got from our survey is they felt it was incredibly successful.
Jennifer, did you think it had an impact on you being closed for 4 days like that?
No, because we told clients starting in late April that we were going to close, that in order for us to be successful for them, we needed to take some time apart to learn best practices, come together as a team, to develop expertise, which corresponded very nicely to say, we're going to come together in a face-to-face event so we can help you develop your face-to-face event. So no, it tied in very nicely with what our clients expect from us. There was absolutely no pushback. As a matter of fact, when I put it on LinkedIn, I can't tell you how many clients congratulated us for doing it and said it was a great job. So no pushback whatsoever.
I think about, let's say you have a leadership team of 5 people. Let's say you just stick with a leadership team, right? Let's say each one of those people make, I don't know, $200,000, right? There's $1 million in salary there. Anything you can do to get that group 2% more efficient, right? 3% more efficient, 5% more efficient, 2% more connected to each other, 10% less likely to quit. These are just hidden opportunities within the business. That's why, like, when you ask, well, what was your budget? I don't fucking care. I promise you, I could have spent $100,000 on that retreat, and I guarantee you it will pay for itself many times over. And so that would be the challenge I have for you, Jay, is like, your scale is such size now, like tiny little moves could actually have a pretty big effect on things. So I think it's exciting that you're open to it. And I think you could really see something exciting from that and really energize people.
Lauren, if you want to have a retreat in your backyard, I'll come over. I just want you to.
I'll get my planning committee on it and I will get you a date. My thanks to Shawn Busse, Jay Goltz, and Jennifer Kerhin, and to our sponsor, The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thanks, everybody. One thing before you go. Everything we do at 21 Hats is created by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs to help us all learn together. So if you get something out of this podcast or out of the morning report, please tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell every business owner you know. Your word of mouth, entrepreneur to entrepreneur, will always be the most effective way to build this community for all of us. Thank you. It means a lot. This episode was produced by another entrepreneur, Jess Stuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Thanks for listening, everyone.